A special thank you to Glenn Kramer, Mark Ware, Byron Colley, Steve Dix, Bill Schreiber, Christopher Hunt, Felix Rodriguez, James Rogers, Norman Fair, Daniel Mayer, Kyle Sarpolis, Leland Lampkins, Lonnie Meisner, Michael Douglas, Paul Wood, Michael Scott, Samuel Draney, and Tom Champion.
Well, it's Monday and it starts another work week here at SNG Studio and the beginning of the SNG Studio weekly update. Yeah. What do you think I'm working on? Yep, I'm still working on the Enterprise. You know, these models take a long time to do. And if you go too quickly, you set yourself back, because when they're this size, and I make the exception with this model because really I'm used to doing bigger stuff and it's really difficult. It can be very hard, in fact, but we're getting there. So, and the deadline's getting closer. Anyway, let me show you what I'm doing. I'm not going to plug in anything or light up anything because this late hour of the day for me, you can see that, you know, this is a lot of lighting, and so far I haven't blown out anything. So. And everything's marked, except these. I know these are all strobes. These are all strobes that go up into the saucer section. And you can see everything coming out of the saucer section here. These need to all be remarked and cut shorter, because I only need a little bit of them sticking out, and a little bit of this, and then I shove the rest down into there. Now, everything's got heat shrink tubing on it, so there's no chance of anything shorting out. I was very thorough about that. So I can shove wires, do what I want without any fear of that. Now, getting these nacelles to close up was a nightmare. I put the glass covers back on. But getting these to attach, and you can see the problems I'm going to have with the putty. There were terrible gaps where this does not want to fit right. As you can see, a lot of the parts don't want to fit right. And I found a lot of warp parts, like, well, it gives a whole new meaning to warp nacelles. These parts themselves were warped. The paddles underneath that hold the nacelles were warped. Now they are warped nacelles, but they're pretty dang straight now. This one was drooping off this way. And what I had to go through to get it to be straight. I will say one thing about these nacelles, though. They're very strong. Now, I know they could break these in shipping, but it's less likely because, unlike the other Enterprise models, they're really tough. So you can see all the putty work that's on it. That's all going to get sanded down. That's Tamiya putty, and the Tamiya putty is it's really good stuff. It's hard, but it sands really very well. In fact, here's where I've been piling it on, and it doesn't take much to sand it down really smooth. So I'm happy with that, because there's a lot of putty on this. There were so many bad gaps, and I have to sand all that stuff down very carefully, and I am going to lose windows and have to paint back over it again and re-scratch again. It's unavoidable. But only in these areas where the joins are. Up here, there's no problem because there's no windows. But the windows are like painfully close to the edges here. Everything else is pretty good. And you can see that this leans back a great deal. Well, that's because of center of gravity. When this is on, now it's going to lean nice and level. So it's my hope. Well, it is my hope. I'm going to tomorrow cut all these, connect all this stuff very carefully, and then check to make sure all the lights are working. And if everything's working, then I can glue this shut permanently, and I can glue the saucer section on. Now this can still come off the base, but I'm hoping I don't have to. I'm hoping I can just turn it upside down to work on the decals, leaving it on the base, because Glenn's going to pick this up. And you can see there's the board in a very happy spot where if something goes wrong, I can remove it very easily and reattach a new one to all the cables. Because all the cables are hooked up by the flashing strobes only. So it's a nice base. It'll do well for this. It doesn't sit very flat, and that's because it too is warped. So I'll see what I can do about that, but I'll probably just put some foot pads on it to raise it up a bit. But yeah, it's warped. It does not sit flat, and so part of it also is what we've got going on under here, but not much. When I first got this base out and set it on a flat surface, I set some weights on it and let them sit for days, hoping it would go flat, but it never did. So I'm just going to extend the bottom of the base a little bit, and then it'll be fine. So this took all day to get all this done. I mean, it was a lot to do, getting all these things to fit together and getting them puttied up and ready to sand down tomorrow, which I'm dreading, but I've got very precise little files. We are going to lose stuff in here, but I'll be very, very careful and then touch the paint up and then rescribe the windows again. At least I don't have to do all of them. But yeah, it's going to be fine. And that's what I got done today. You know that scene in The Right Stuff? You know the one, the guy starting to push the button. I go through that every time I wire up one of these models, and this is the big wire girl. You can tell by my hand on it. This is not a 1-350. As many of you always will write and say, not always, but you write and say, oh, yeah, I have that 1-350. I said, no, you don't understand. This is scratch built. Anyway, I remember when I first lit this up and I had everything in, and you go to plug it in. You know what happened? It didn't light up. It was because one wire came loose. But this streak goes through you because there's so many wires and so many lights in these things, and there's so much that can go horribly wrong if you're not careful. Let me show you how it went. So this is where we're at with the model. You can see, you know, the windows are lit up, the windows are lit up, the cells are lit up, and again, I mean, this is, both the cells look nice and even glowing, and this foam just does what it does. But you can see both of those are flashing. I haven't cut them flush yet with the inside, but they're both blinking very well. We got that strobe flashing very well. And we have these blinking away. This is the red one. And if we go underneath and take a look underneath here, all this is working. Now these are very long. I have not cut them down yet. And this one doesn't even look like it's working, but it is, because what's happening is, you can see the red there. And what's happening is that there's some overpowering of the lights inside that are hitting the fiber optics. So what I need to do is just put some black paint over them from the inside, and that'll cut down on that a great deal. This one stays lit up too, but that's fine. It doesn't really bother me, because what you'd have to go through to isolate all those was really pretty amazing. So we do have some big old gaps that have to be dealt with, and of course there's the deflector. So all that's working. You can see the enormous gap because the parts don't fit together well. And I have forced this thing together so tight, and you still got them. And that's why we have the Tamiya putty, because where I used it on these, there are no gaps at all. No light leaking through anywhere. So that was very thorough, and that goes through underneath as well. There's nothing leaking through under here either. So we're doing good. I have to put this piece in next, but I just wanted to make sure that when I plugged this thing in, that everything was working. And Randy's power supplies, you know, I used to just buy my own because they were cheaper. Never cheap out, ever, because what happens sometimes when you run a board, if it doesn't have enough current, enough amperage in it, and it's not a regulated power supply, when the strobes blink, the windows dim, and you can see clearly they're not dimming. Everything's staying evenly lit, and that is a huge plus. I am very pleased. The next thing to do is now take care of the problems inside of here that keep the glow down on these. Put some epoxy behind these so they don't come loose by accident and pop down inside. and go ahead and put some black paint over all the fiber optics to cut down on this glowing effect. So, but yeah, now we should be able to put the whole ship together. You know, pretty darn cool. So I'm very relieved. That was a lot of wiring to do, but it all worked out very well. So, yes. Here's a quickie little update for SNG on the Enterprise E. It's just taped together right now. Actually, the the engineering section is entirely glued together. The saucer section is not yet, and you can see there's our deflector shield, but everything's working great. That's our red strobe. There's a green strobe. Where is it? There it is. They have not been cut flush yet, and I have not filled all the gaps yet, but I did get all the lights in. They're all working. Even the observation deck there that looks down onto the hangar release area where the doors open down here is done. We're all done with lights underneath. It's looking really great. And you can see all about this in this week's SNG weekly update, which we post on Saturday. So really came out very well. Thanks to Randy Newbert for helping me get the board together. You can see that these strobes are blinking great. All this stuff has to be cut flush. Once I retouch the paint up and fill all the gaps before I put the decals on, then I will do that flush. But boy, is she pretty. Really nice. Okay, so here we are. The saucer section is attached. You can see that, you can see the lights and all the daylight that's going on here. They show up very well. These need to be scratched out a little bit more, I think, but not too much. Not all of them should be bright. The base is in. It's a lot of putty on it, sending up a lot of bad fitting parts, and I mean a lot of bad fitting parts. Now, luckily, this stuff sands very easily, and I can sand it down and then touch up the paint and do a little rescribing, and it'll be fine. But the nice thing about it is it's well, let me turn it right side up, and again, I have had people to tell me that, oh, you got a problem with your nacelles and they're not lighting up evenly and all this stuff. This is the iPhone. I know you all think very highly of the iPhone. I don't. Because on a real camera, and to my eye, there's no dark blue ring around that. See that dark blue there and the dark blue there? That's not there in real life. So there it is, sitting on the base, all in one piece, straight as a ramrod. It might be drooping just a little bit, but I think that's the actual base itself, the tube in here, so I got to straighten that out a little bit, but that's about it. Most of the light leaks have been filled already, but there's a few more to go. But overall, it lit up pretty well. We got some leaking around here, a little leak under there. Let's see what we got underneath. Not much underneath at all. That's all sealed up pretty darn well. The fantail's got a little bit of a glow there on that one part I added, you can see, but that will be easily repaired. But other than that, this thing is pretty lightly proof. I don't know what this black stuff is. I think it's where some of the paint came off. It's easily fixed, but wow, look at that, huh? It's all one piece. She's got beautiful lines, this ship. Really nice. So next step on this is going to be to sand down all that putty tomorrow and get it all smooth, do a little rescribing, do a little bit of touch-up paint, and then the next day we can start putting on the decals. Okay, this is the end of the week. We're wrapping it up. I got pretty far on this. I got the whole top of it pretty much all the seams blended and filled, and you have to go over it again and again and again and hit it with very harsh light before you start to see whether or not you're really getting the problems. And there's a lot of problems on this because the parts, most of the parts were warped kind of just enough that they didn't want to fit together. I don't know if all the AMT kits these days are that way, or I just got one that probably was pulled out of the molds too soon or something like that. But let me show you. So as I go along here, I keep, you see where the red putty is? Those are areas, oh, and the Mr. Surfacer 1000, Mr. Surfacer 1000, I love it. I mean, it's really good for filling little things that keep showing up and they're very irritating. Like there was a little pinhole gappy thing. You can see how well it's sealed it up there, these parts. They really don't fit that well. And of course, under here, this part didn't fit that well either. And it didn't fit well here and didn't fit well here, but it sure does now, doesn't it? Because I used AB epoxy and cleaned it up. So it's pretty much ready to put decals on Monday, except for I have to scratch back out some of the windows that got painted over. And underneath here, we've got a lot of sanding, but luckily it's all flat area, not many windows to worry about. Underneath here, you can see I need to do that. And I think the whole saucer section should have fit down more here, but it just wouldn't go. And it wasn't my wires. I don't know what it was. It just, the parts weren't fitting that well. But I think overall, she looks pretty darn good. So I'm not gonna light it up right now because it's got tape over everything to protect the clear parts. And you know, we still gotta cut these flush, but after I paint it, because you get paint on them, as I did on this by accident. They're too bright anyway, and it kind of dims them down, but we're just about there and just about ready to put all these wonderful decals on right here. And it's quite a few. I'll give you a little preview. Now it gives you these, but they're not really necessary. These are, absolutely, the lifeboats, but these are not because we're lit up. So, this is, there's, I guess, 3 sheets. They say pages, but it's sheets, I call it. Get out of this bag. So this is the underside of the engineering section. You can see how much goes on this. I mean, there's not going to be much of my whole color showing, except underneath a bit. And this is for the nacelle, so that's really going to do some amazing things there. Because we're going to use Solvasat or Microsol, and that will make all this stuff lay down like it's painted. And I know these decals work that way. They're brand new. More stuff for nacelles, which are up here. So there's no painting to do. The painting's all done for you in the decals, and although that makes it sound easier, you have to be really careful. None of these are pre-cut. In other words, they're just printed with a laser printer. You can see just by the sheen, there's no edge to it. So I have to cut all those out. Although everything else is transparent, this is not. Now here's the top of the saucer section. No, this is the underside of the saucer section. You can see how much coverage is, you know, there'll be a little bit of my hole showing between these areas, but not much, because this fits down right into there pretty well. So, and this is the top of the saucer section. And again, all this area here has got decals right over it. And so what I'm gonna have to do is put these on and light it up. Yeah, light it up. I think that's how it's gonna work. Maybe it does go around the windows. But some of these will go over the windows, I'm sure, and when they do, I have to go in and scratch them out after it dries. So, and that's it. That's enough. That's a lot of decals. Luckily, they're big sections, so they should go fairly quickly. So, that's what's left to do on this model. Of course, I got to paint the base, which I should have done first, but forgot. So I hope you enjoyed this week's SNG Studio update. We'll be back next week for more. And remember, if you like this video, hit the like button. It really helps. Also subscribe. We're trying to get our subscribers up past 5,000. We're almost there, and you could help get it there. And then don't forget, buy me a coffee. If you feel so inclined, we could use your support to keep making these videos, because these models alone being built don't pay for everything around here. So thank you very much for you guys who've done that already, and a few of you did this week, and thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated. It means a lot to Mary and I, and we'll see you next week.